Of the following, American federalism is most clearly exemplified by the
What's the 10th Amendment of the Constitution mean?
It's the checks and balances.
Why is there checks and balances?
I agree. Chappie.
Tell me.
He gave us
I
a
think
chance.
it's the
Okay.
10th Amendment.
So that way the federal government doesn't have like this all ruling powers, because they have to check each other.
It could be A or D.
Wouldn't that be A and D, so?
I'm saying D because
That's
the
the
10th
same
Amendment
thing.
is
Oh,
states'
okay.
rights.
Yeah,
yeah.
Federalism is all about the states. They want the power for the
I thought
states.
federalism
I'd
was about a
say
strong central government.
It's D.
The answer is D.
Yes.
Federalism is a system under which the federal government shares power with the states. Remember, if you go through the amendments, all right,
Checks and
and you
balances.
think of the 10th Amendment,
Right.
it's specified in there the powers that belong to the government, or the federal government, and then those that aren't spelled out are inherent powers of the state. So,
And checks and balances more for the different parts. of
check
the
and
national
balances, correct, are for the three branches of the federal government.
government. So that's
International treaties are the sole responsibility of the federal government and do not relate in any way to a state. Remember that? The state cannot have a treaty. And then D, Washington, D.C. does not have special constitutional status as the nation's capital. And the president's power to grant reprieves in part is solely a function of the federal government. All right, so very good. All right, number 17 then, out of the AP test.
Is that E?
All of the following are specifically mentioned in the Constitution except. All of the following are mentioned in the Constitution except. So, Mariah.
I'd say A.
I said A also.
A?
well,
All
it's,
right?
Because judicial review wasn't established until the Marshall Court.
It was Marbury v. Madison.
Supreme Court case.
Marbury v.
All right.
Madison.
Marbury v. Madison. All right, that was when the judicial review. Very good. Why could you eliminate Why could you eliminate the census?
because
Reapportionment.
it is.
It's in the
It's in the,
Yeah,
yeah.
our Constitution, same with impeachment,
All right.
State of the Union.
Because that's how we do our redistricting. That's in the Constitution. Rules of impeachment are spelled out.
D is one of the powers of the president.
All right, that is correct. He is supposed to. And then, of course, E are those judges. It's spelled out that the president has the power to nominate and then the Senate approve. All right, number 18. All right. Which of the following correctly states the relationship between the federal and the state judiciaries? I've told you there's a lot of questions on your AP exam as far as our judiciary system. So 18, what can you eliminate? What do you feel like the
B.
Because
You can
the
eliminate
federal
D.
court hears state cases all the time, depending on their constitutionality.
All right, so you said which one, D?
B, you can cancel out B.
The two are entirely on one, and neither ever hears cases that originate in the other.
You can rule out D too, because you have like specific courts that are the appellate courts. But but they're both state and federal, or no,
The states hear
Only-
some federal, the states hear some appeals courts, cases.
All right.
so you can mark
Yeah.
on that one.
Remember, federal courts are, state courts are trial, federal courts are appeals courts, all right, when it comes to that. All right, so if you look down, now you've narrowed down, what do you think?
It's
What are you
not
down?
E, because
I say C.
all cases, there's also federal cases where somebody does something like against the federal court, like treason, federal
Or the
government. So
state
that's,
does it.
to me, it happened in one state, but
Just keep state affairs in with the
it's only
state
federal.
All right.
side.
So, we end up with C. Now, and listen to what it says. The two are generally autonomous, although federal courts may rule on the constitutionality of state courts. All right, so always remember that. The answer would be C, all right, because federal courts can rule on the constitutionality. Yes,
Can
ma'am.
you explain what autonomous means?
It's like on its
It's
own,
like
it works on its
self-ruling,
own.
right?
It works by itself as like one unit.
Stand alone.
Okay.
Why is the federal court, I thought the federal courts were higher than state courts, especially since you have the Supreme Court.
Federal courts are higher. Remember, we have a two-court system, state and federal. Federal courts are higher, but they only rule on the constitutionality of a state court.
Okay, so that's the key word, is the constitutionality.
Right. Okay? You get to there, it's a constitutionality. All right. Number 19, the line item veto was found unconstitutional because,
C, because the veto is only the power over the president. No other part of government can veto a bill or anything. So it can't be legislative, can't be bureaucracy, can't be a state power. Because the governor can veto
Also, the
bills,
line,
state bills.
the line item veto did give a lot of legislative power to the president because he could choose and pick what he wanted in a bill to pass. So
the line item veto was considered in violation of what system that we have that are checks and balances. Very good. Very good. All right. Number 20, among the executive branch's checks on the legislative branch is the president's power to,
A.
Yeah.
And
It's not D, because he can't vote on anything in Congress.
He
It's
can't
not
introduce
just- that's
bills
not-
either.
all right?
yeah, it's not.
Can't introduce it.
There's no way. The president can't vote, can he?
No. It's not B, because he can't introduce bills before Congress.
So he can't vote on act of Congress. All right, so you take away D. Give me something else.
It's not E because,
Which one I'm just in here?
E, because that's the chairperson's power to disband committees.
Yeah, nothing to do with congressional committees. Very good.
it's not B. I don't know if
Right,
it is
there's
that
a-
one. Well,
I'd say it's, he can address Congress, but I don't think during debate on bills. I don't
Well, it's A, because isn't that? in the
When can he address Congress?
So it's
State of the Union.
The what? The
State of the
Union.
State of the Union, which is when? Anybody know?
Tuesday.
This week?
This week, tomorrow, which hopefully you will all watch. The State of the Union is tomorrow. The President of the United States can ask to speak to Congress. He cannot just show up and talk to Congress. He can ask to speak to Congress and all. But remember, he can call a special session. Special sessions are very rare now because of why? Congress is what?
split parties.
A full-time job now, isn't it? When it was first started off, when our country was first set up, Congress just met, every once in a while. Now it's turned into a 365-day, a year job. So, yes, sir.
What would happen during those special sessions? Like, what would he do?
He would call Congress back for a specific reason, like maybe the budget, or to raise, like, for example, the debt ceiling. He would call them back for a special issue. It wouldn't be just to come back to work. It would be to deal with one priority item.
Like sign the Declaration of War.
If the president wanted to ask Congress to declare war, he would have to call that back for a special session if they were out. Yes, sir. All right? So, all right, very good. All right, 21. The amount of access cabinet secretaries have to the president is most likely to be controlled by the,
B. The vice president doesn't really control who gets to see the president.
vice president. Very seldom gets to see the president himself, right? He's, we've talked about that's not the biggest office anymore. So you're saying B. What? Tell me, Luke, why? Why do you think the president's chief of staff?
And because, pretty much because of his name, chief of staff, he controls the president's staff basically, so he gets to choose who gets to see the president and when.
And he is the chief of staff. Look at the others, if you would. National Security Advisor, Chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, and the President's Secretary. Those are all individuals that are in charge of one area. The chief of staff, you're talking in charge of the president's staff. I mean, he oversees a large group.
Is that an appointed position or is that?
That is a position appointed by the president, does not need approval of the Senate, all right? The president may appoint whoever he wants to be his chief of staff. All right. Looking at page 22, question 22. Unlike a treaty, an executive agreement
C.
C.
It's what?
C.
C, you're saying does not require the Senate's approval. Is it binding?
Yes.
Yeah,
It's the same as a treaty.
just like a treaty or law, isn't it? Does not involve international relations.
Treaty.
The whole point
That's-
is to,
All right. Now, all right, now wait a minute. Unlike a treaty, an executive agreement does not, all right, we know that the executive agreement is what? It's relations with another country. All right? Can be enforced by the military
You can't really enforce anything.
President can
Alright.
send out.
and automatically expires after 1 year. It's binding on who? The following president, right? All right, very good. 23.